Hello and welcome back to the American Unity Show. I'm your host, Greg Fanning. Today is the start of our RunGenZ series, where we're going to hear from different young elected officials from Generation Z, each under the age of 30. But first, a word from our partners. Do you, dear viewer, believe it is important for our children to have a strong understanding of our nation's Constitution? Well, a friend of mine, Emma Turner, does, and has written a children's book to teach them the basics of our Constitution's history and the amendment process. Her book, My Living Constitution, teaches young children about the amendments of the Constitution and what they mean. Check out Emma's book at mylivingconstitution.com. That's mylivingconstitution.com, and use the coupon code on the screen. RunGenZ is a nonprofit with a clear mission. They aim to help conservative candidates get more involved in the political process for office all around the country. In fact, a few of our past guests on the show, such as West Virginia Delegate Josh Holstein, City Councilman Joel Castro and Nathan Rodriguez, as well as Oklahoma House of Representatives candidate Michael Bauman, have all been elected with the help or are helping RunGenZ. In the organization's own words, RunGenZ will recruit and find leaders within college campuses, grassroots organizations, and civilian groups who are able and willing and ready to run for state and local office and fulfill other public service opportunities. This is executed by giving this next generation the confidence and the assistance needed, leading to thousands of young conservative leaders working to spread conservative values across this country. This organization will mobilize thousands of free-thinking young people to run for office and win and make substantial changes to our country that are desperately needed. Desperately needed is what I added in there, but it's true. This is a nationwide movement that will be a diverse team. There are half a dozen lawmakers from a wide range of states that each have a unique ability to guide and connect with the inspiring politicians. With their guidance, we will be able to raise up Generation Z candidates and leaders that value conservative policies. The organization was started by Iowa State Representative Joe Mitchell. They've been endorsed by prominent conservatives such as U.S. Representatives Kat Cammack and Madison Cawthorn, and former Iowa Governor and former Ambassador to China Terry Branstad. And now we have State Representative Braxton Mitchell.
For coming on, Braxton. Really appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, so I got into politics when I was about 15, 16 years old. Just really started following politics. Never really had any political aspiration, per se, but I just kind of helped out with various campaigns locally for the state and federally here in the state of Montana. And then in about 2019, I had some folks that kind of said, hey, you should maybe consider, running for like a local seat. A lot of folks are, have been interested in seeing, more younger people run for office. And I was kind of convinced by an individual running for the state party sheriff here in Montana. He had kind of drew me into running, and I about a year before, about in 2019 or so, early 2019, and then the fall of 19, I was speaking with some folks at some local, Montana's a very small, tight-knit community. Speak with some folks there, and some community leaders kind of suggested it also, and I decided to run for House District 3 here in Montana for the state legislature. Had a great campaign season, took a lot of attacks from the Democrats because obviously they hate seeing, young guys run for office because that, depicts their narrative that, every young person in America is a Democrat. But was able to come through in that, and just got through my first legislative session. I think it went pretty good. I really wasn't policy oriented as a freshman. A lot of freshmen aren't, but now that if I make it back and, now that I've learned the ropes, understand how, legislative process works and stuff like that, I have, 15, 16 different proposals for, just a variety of issues here in Montana.
That's awesome. Yeah. Shows that young people can, make a difference, and they're also interested in learning the ropes before they, just make brash decisions, so you're trying to learn before you pass laws, which is professional. It's not just it's putting good policy over politics, which is always a good thing. So my second question is here: why did you run? Like, I know you answered this a little bit in your last question, but what were the real reasons? Was it a specific issue? Something happened in your neighborhood or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, I was convinced, and a lot of folks had suggested, hey, you should run. But one of the biggest reasons too was because a Democrat had represented my area. I'm in very deep red northwestern Montana. The individual knew a lot of folks, and so had a was just barely able to squeeze by every election. But if you looked at the guy's voting record, it never actually represented his district, even though they voted Democrat for him but red for everything else. And that was kind of my first personal, I guess, reason for wanting to run. And then actually the day I announced I was running, he actually dropped out of the race. And so they actually appointed so the Republicans had in our county, so our commissioners in our county are all Republican. They had to appoint a Democrat because the Democrat had won the seat to temporarily fill it, and so that Democrat then filed to run for re-election, and I ran against her. And after doing some digging, talking to the folks, no one really knew who she was. We realized she had just moved from Florida. Some say 10 years ago, some say a year and a half at that point. And so there was just a lot of just kind of baggage on her from a I guess a carpetbagger standpoint, is like some people like to say, at least here in Montana. And so yeah. So it was just kind of obviously a variety, just different things, but it kind of came down to who was trying to run for the seat. So.
And how much did you win by?
So we ended up winning by 20 points. So it was quite a drastic flip. I was very shocked. I figured towards the end of the campaign that the momentum was definitely on our side. Just it seemed like 8 out of every 10 doors was kind of about the accuracy that were what we looked at throughout the door knocking. When we compiled on the info, it looked like 8 in every 10 doors were in support. But obviously, we were mainly trying to knock on, people who we thought were Republicans' doors. And we knocked on the same doors, 2, 3, 4 times over in the district, thousands and thousands of them. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. And just kind of based on polling, everything else, we thought election night, just because, the Trump way turnout, that we would probably win between, 2 to 5 points, 5 being astronomical. And I think people just were excited to see a young guy run for office, just a local, young kid who, cared about his community and just wanted to, go in and try and make a change at a young age. And I think a lot of people supported that, and it doesn't seem like so far I've lost any of that support. I've registered a ton of new voters, for this next election here. I've just met with a lot of different folks, and everybody who was in support then still seem to be in support. So I think 2022 shouldn't be an issue, especially with the midterms coming up and just going on in Washington nationally. So I think we're set up pretty well for the future.
Yeah. Talked to Josh Holstein. Yeah, he's the exact same thing. He thinks we're going to pick up like 70 seats in the House or something. So. Yep.
Yes, we have 2/3 in the legislature. We have 67, 33, and in the Senate, I think we have 31 or 32. And we think it's possible we could pick up as much as 75 in the House next cycle. So it's going to be very interesting. So.
Yeah, that's great stuff. But so I know you said you kind of not been on the legislating side during your first term. I'll ask you one more question. How old were you when you wanted to 18 or 19, or how old were you?
Yep. So when I filed, I was 19 years old. I turned 21 this May. Yep. So I was elected at 20 years old in November of 2020.
Nice. That's awesome to hear. But so what are some things you've been able to do? And if you're not, I know you said you haven't been able to do, or you didn't want to do a lot, you just trying to learn the ropes, but what are some things you would like to do, or some things, minor, major, doesn't matter, that you have done or would like to do in the Montana legislature?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm very involved in, I think election reform. I've always been a guy who's always wanted more this, more of that, less of this, less of that in regards to election. A bill I want to bring is here in Montana. We tried to we got rid of same-day voter registration. I tried to bring an amendment that brought it back to the Friday before the election. And, the Democrats like to say it's voters. And unfortunately, that amendment died. I think it died by 2 votes. So I almost got that through my first year here. But the Democrats say, well, this is voter suppression. I don't think so, because I think counties, when it comes to election day, election week, that Monday, that Tuesday, they need to be there working on, getting these ballots through, not, registering people last minute, because it just opens up to a lot of different things. And, and it puts a lot of chaos in the elections department. And that's why you see people who are out at 8, 9, 10, 11, because, at night waiting to vote, because people waited till the very last, second to register. And that's when the public distrust in elections comes in, and there's a whole, another mess to that. Another thing too is, critical race theory. Obviously, that's a big issue. That kind of hit the just when we were getting out of the legislative session. And I've talked to some folks since the cycle's gotten over, said, hey, you should bring this next cycle. You're the young guy. We think maybe a young person should bring this bill for next cycle. So that's something we're looking at. Another one too. I mean, I don't think the federal government should be involved in trying to change state election laws. So I want to bring a bill that says, hey, here in Montana, our election laws are our election laws, because we're seeing from the Biden administration and folks in Congress right now, they want to put a 1-tier system of voting and, make that, a 1-tier system for everywhere in the country, So if, whatever Congress says, the federal government says, your state goes. And I believe, strongly in states' rights and their ability to do what they want to do, conduct their own elections, et cetera. So, that's another thing also. But, yeah, I mean, that's just a couple of the, ideas so far that I'm just kind of looking on and working on. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, behind all great policies comes, planning and research, right? So, well, that's good to hear that you're, active and passing laws that, that do good for the state of Montana. So, my next question is, let's see here. But, I walked away from my list. I'm sorry. All right. So tell us how you've been able to do the things you do. Have you done it through bipartisanship? Or have you done it by just explaining, educating, or what?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. What would you think? How have you been able to do the things you're able to do? Have you been able by bipartisanship, or just making connections, or what do you think the key to getting things done is? How have you been able to do what you've been able to do?
Yeah, I think just I got really connected with Turning Point USA at when I was in high school, and just kind of got a lot of connections throughout the years, and had the door open for a lot of opportunities just here in the state, and advocating for folks nationally and whatnot. So I think just variety of a few different things, but just just kind of having those connections to a lot of individuals, and I think just being young also. I mean, people really admire that, especially nowadays. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. So I know this is kind of the big question why RunGenZ exists. How did you hear about RunGenZ, actually?
Yeah, so it was actually pretty funny. So we were at a Turning Point USA event this past December. So I just won my election, and I was in a conversation. Don't remember who it was, and Mason Morgan, Joe Mitchell, and Carter Nordham. So they're some of the founders of RunGenZ. They were actually standing right behind me, and they overheard the conversation I was having with another individual, and they said, "Whoa, did we just hear that right? Did you say you just won a legislative race?" And from there on, we got chatting, and I joined their Rising Stars group and became a guy who's kind of they talk to for pinpointed ideas on helping out with this, helping out with that. So Yeah, that's actually how I had heard about RunGenZ. So it's a very kind of funny ordeal how that happened, but yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people. I've never heard that one. That's a good one. That's
yeah,
far. Yeah.
And what I like about RunGenZ is, running as a candidate last year, it would have been amazing to have a resource like that. That's why I like to tell candidates running now. I mean, it would have been awesome to have a resource like that. So, I'm happy now to, have candidates I'm working with and, kind of telling them some of the things I went through as a young guy and, and to, kind of help them, push through, some of the issues that they're facing or, some concerns that they have. So, I think RunGenZ, they have a great mission, and they're doing a great job and, just being, an organization in just a year. So.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great organization. I love the best part about it is that mentorship, program where they actually mentor candidates, not just like, this is how you do things. Here's your instruction guide. You're on your own now. But they actually have somebody that's like your consultant, your campaign manager, everything you need for these small little races, which is vital to any new candidate, I think. So,
yep, for sure.
Talk to a lot of people out there, and some of them maybe are involved, maybe some of them aren't. And I tell them that I do activism. I say I would like to run at some point. They say it sounds crazy. And I've been recently using my friend Josh Holstein. He's only 8 months older than I am. And you're not far ahead. You're 21 years old. And I use him as an example. But he's only 19. He's an elected member of the West Virginia House of Delegates, and he's not much older than people I talk to. And my question to you is, how do you convince people? How do you get them interested in the idea of running? It may seem crazy, it may seem, impossible, but what would you say to them to, really to thinking about it and it's possible for somebody who is young?
Yeah, I mean, if you, I think if somebody's super, super interested in politics, kind of like I was, and you want to go in, if you have the ambition, to want to, make change, then, I think you should run for office, whether it's a school board race, whether it's a city council race, state legislative race, ultimately into the halls of Congress. It's important that our generation stands up now because we're seeing, the Democrats have been doing for years. They've been getting the young people involved here and there and in the colleges, even the high schools nowadays, even junior high, frankly. And, they're starting to brainwash these kids too in the schools and the whole system. So if we can get these young guys to come out, defeat the narrative, show other young folks who, maybe don't know where they're at politically and whatnot and say, hey, look at what this kid's doing. Oh, what does he, talk about? What does he campaign on? I think, just things like that.
Yeah, it really sums it down. Well, thanks, Rex. I appreciate you coming on here. If you have anything else you'd like to say, by all means.
Sorry, you kind of broke up there again. My bad.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, thanks for coming on, Braxton. I really appreciate it. So this is a good time for closing. If you'd like to say anything else, by all means.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you letting me come on here. I know we've been trying to get this going for a few weeks here, but we finally got it on. So, yeah, no, we just got to stay motivated and strong heading into 22. It's going to be I think something that really, really sets a tone, not just for 24, not just for 26, but the next 10, 20 years of politics. Because I mean, we're not just right versus left right now. It's literally common sense versus, just complete insane left-wing craziness. So I mean, this is the battle for the soul of our nation. Our family's futures and our country's future ultimately. So yep.
Kamala Harris said it best. What happens in 2021 will affect what happens in 2022, 2024, and beyond, right? So,
yep, and Glenn Youngkin swept it, so that's great to see.
Exactly. So I think that will set a big precedent for what happens next year and the years to come for young people and good conservatives and true Americans all over this country. So, all right, well, thanks for coming on here, and best of luck, and hope to see you soon, maybe in February out here for the national conference. So,
yeah, well, I will be there, so I'll see you then.
All right, you know where it's going to be?
I believe it's in Dallas.
All right, I thought that sounds fun. Better than Des Moines, right? Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people don't like Des Moines, but
I like Des Moines. I mean, it's like Montana.
Really? Yeah, you and me. But all right. Well, thanks for coming on, Braxton. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Now we have founder and chairman of RunGenZ and Iowa State Representative Joe Mitchell. Joe, originally elected at age 21, serves Iowa's 84th House District, which is located in the southeast region of the state. He graduated from Drake University with a bachelor's degree in business administration and elected during his senior year of college. In his first term as a state legislator, Joe excelled in becoming a fellow at the BILLD, Byway Institute for Legislative Leadership, and a commissioner for the Midwest Higher Education Commission. On November 3rd, 2020, Joe won re-election to the Iowa House of Representatives with 71.2% of the vote. Unbelievably amazing. In the legislature, Joe serves on the Ways and Means Committee, Judiciary, State Government Committees, as well as the RIFF Budget State Subcommittee. He's going to tell you a little bit about his experiences and the things he's been able to do, how he's been able to do them.
All right, we're good. So, well, thanks for coming on the program, Joe. We really appreciate it. You coming on to conclude our RunGenZ series at the American Unity Show here. So my first question to you is, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, appreciate you having me on today. I know we've been looking forward to doing this for a while, so I'm glad we got it finally worked out. But a little bit about myself and about my background is, I'm a state representative in the great state of Iowa. I got elected when I was 21 in 2018. Serving my second term now at the age of 24. And, much like a lot of young people that, get into politics at a young age, their parents were a little bit influential, right? And so my parents were, always pretty staunch conservatives growing up, had a small business, taught me, how the government can, absolutely hurt your business and be able to grow markets, but also, help in some instances. And, we watch Fox News a lot, right? So I grew up on, Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly and,
Sounds familiar.
Kelly growing up. And, that's where I got a lot of my initial interest in, in domestic and world politics and how those things can shape things for the better or for the worse. And was always really interested in American history and government classes in high school. And my senior year of high school, my English teacher, Miss Weir, suggested that I apply for something called the PAGE program, which you go up to the Capitol and you serve in an internship type role as a high schooler and get to meet, the different legislators and their staff and, network with folks and really learn state politics and how it affects folks in real time, right? And so went up there, and that was my first kind of formal dose of politics. And after that, went to Drake University in Des Moines, where I majored in business, and I continued to work at the Capitol, though, because I still had an interest in that. Worked there as a legislative clerk in the state Senate for 2 years, then worked in the governor's office as an intern, worked in Senator Joni Ernst's office in D.C. as an intern, and came back my junior year. And my predecessor, 24 years, was decided to retire. And so I had a decision to make. Was I going to run for his seat or not? And so I ultimately decided to do that. But the first conversation I had with my predecessor, 24 years, all right, longer than we've been alive, was, hey, I'm thinking about running for your seat. And he said, Joe, you're too young and you're too inexperienced. So obviously that was kind of a shot to the gut. But talked to several other folks who said, Joe, what do you have to lose? If you lose a primary, you lose a primary. And, there's nothing bad about that, right? You shouldn't feel bad about, giving your effort to represent your community and potentially losing. But there was an opportunity that opened, and everything's about opportunity and timing, in politics. So ultimately decided to, run for the state representative seat, had a 4-way primary, was running against people 2-3 times my age.
Wow.
Folks that were, one of them who was picked out by the party and by the speaker. But, what I did that the other opponents did not do was I knocked on doors. And I made phone calls across the constituents across my district asking for their vote and listening to them on the issues that they were concerned about, and ultimately came out on top and won my primary by 100 votes, and then went on to the general election and won by 20 points. So I got elected in November of 2018, graduated at college from Drake in December of 2018, and then got sworn into the Iowa House as the youngest member ever in January of 2019.
Wow. That's we've interviewed a few more people at RunGenZ, and there's always this amazing story. I think you probably top it. Just the most establishments up against you, and just great background. Great things to offer, and have to really run it up. And it was hard work, but you did it. So I think that's one of the great things about RunGenZ is that it helps you kind of alleviate some of that stress. Almost it doesn't take it away, but helps with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And that's ultimately, obviously, why I started RunGenZ was I got into the legislature and I realized there's not a ton of young conservatives, right, that are represented in the state legislatures, on city councils, on school boards, in governmental bodies across the country. But I knew that we could have more proportional representation across the country in the different governmental bodies, but we just needed to go out and tell our stories. And so I went around, after I got elected, and was talking to younger folks and groups of younger people I was asked to talk to, from young professionals clubs to young Republican clubs to Turning Point chapters. And my main message to them was, if I can do it, you can do it, right? I'm not an anomaly. I'm not an outlier or 4.0 student. I just went out there and did the hard work and listened to people and, and shed the shoe leather and was able to come out on top. And I said that anybody else that does that can do the same exact thing. If they're willing to be, humble and go out there and actually do the work, which most people aren't willing to do. And so ultimately that's where this idea sprung out of, but I knew I needed a team that surrounded me. And so that's when I reached out to my co-founders, Caleb Hanna, youngest African-American ever elected to a state office in American history, Josie Tomkow, Amber Mariano, both got elected in their early 20s to the Florida state legislature, and Joe Alexander from New Hampshire got elected at 23. But I knew I needed a team around me that was a diverse team of individuals that could tell this story, tell their stories to more people, to encourage them to run for office, and then kind of start a domino effect where, we're mentoring individuals, recruiting individuals, and then they're the next individuals to lead this movement and to empower the next generation of folks to run and lead. Yeah.
That's awesome. So let me ask you another question. So you might have addressed this a little bit in your previous question, but why did you run? Was there something specific, a policy thing you felt? Did you not? Was there something that specific made you run, or was it just a right time, right place, just do it kind of thing? What was kind of the reason you ran?
Yeah, so there were several reasons. The things that I ran on was, number one, a balanced budget. I said if the state has to have a balanced budget, or if you have to have a balanced budget as a family or as a small business, then the state should have a balanced budget too. So that was my number one concern. Still will always be my number one concern. We'll make sure that we're fiscally responsible with taxpayers' money. Number two was small business-friendly policies, cutting taxes and regulations for small businesses. Obviously, as I told you, I grew up in a family, where my parents essentially achieved the American dream, didn't go to college, started a business, and now employ 35 people in our community and help folks all around the world be able to walk and make orthopedic braces for babies with club feet. But I understood, again, how, the government can be detrimental to, growing small businesses, and if there's red tape up or obstacles in the way to be able to get over barriers of entry. So, and then the third one was rural school public education funding. We don't have private schools in my district, and so, making sure that our rural schools were adequately funded compared to the urban schools, was an important thing that I ran on as well. So, but I looked at these issues and I thought, these are ones that represent our community well, that whether you're Democrat or Republican, you should be able to run on, but essentially it came down to, I thought as a young person, somebody that, is a bit of an entrepreneur and comes from an entrepreneurial family, that we can also apply that to politics. And so, a lot of times I think people get in there and they don't think outside the box on issues or how to make government work better. And I think we need some more folks that are a little bit more, risk averse, but also entrepreneurial to be able to, propose policies that maybe haven't been proposed before to make sure that we can continue to make our state a better place.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's always good when, government, U.S., when representatives actually represent their constituents and not, serve themselves for self-gain, which is good. But great to see you've been able to do things for the people of your district. So that's great. So it leads us to our next question. What are some things you have been able to do in office?
Yeah, so several things come to mind. Number one, we had this program in the state called IJAG, which stands for the Iowa Jobs America Graduate Program. And so essentially this is a program that's a public-private partnership in our high schools. Some freshmen up to seniors can take this class where essentially you learn about career opportunities in your community. And so it's a third funded by the state, a third funded by the local school board, and a third funded by the local chamber or businesses in the community, or these young people that are maybe on a bad track, that or maybe have a bad home life. They're able to kind of get mentored through the IJAG instructor, but then learn about careers that they can potentially go into after high school. That maybe isn't college, right? Maybe it is college, maybe it's not, but they get to learn about careers that they're interested in and go have internships in the local community to be able to better, prepare themselves for, post-graduation. So, that's been a very exciting program that I've been able to get, an extra probably $5 to $10 million over the last 2 years into that program to be able to create another, 30 to 40 new IJAG programs around the state in different school districts, including Mount Pleasant School District, which is my main school district in my district. And so that's kind of my baby in the legislature, and always will advocate for that because I think it's so essential that we have these private-public partnerships, and essentially, with our workforce programs, but also to be able to help these more disadvantaged kids, learn about career opportunities, so they're, in the post-graduation aren't kind of just, set out by themselves alone and go down a bad path, right? So that's number one. Number two is another workforce issue, working on bringing folks from other parts of the country to Iowa to live and work, and being able to educate them on, the wages that we have and the, the standard of living, but also the low cost of living to live in Iowa. So I've had several programs as well that I've proposed to bring more folks, to the state of Iowa, which, is something that I deeply care about.
That's great. So the key to getting anything done is, there's got to be a strategy behind, how you get something done. So how have you been able to do the things you've been able to do? Was it by working with the way you work with your colleagues, by partisanship, or what do you see as kind of the golden mean for, getting things done and how you're able to do those?
Yeah, well, Greg, everything in life revolves around one simple rule, and that's treat others how you want to be treated, right? The golden rule.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, it's the same thing in the legislature, just as like it is in any other workplace or organization that you're going to work in. And, essentially, you got to build relationships with people, and you got to make sure that they trust you, and they, when you tell them something or try to explain an issue to them that you care about, that they're going to be able to, agree with that and support that, or at least not oppose that. And so you got to be able to build relationships and, be able to have these relationships with people, to be able to build these coalitions out, because coalitions are everything, majorities are everything. And so, obviously we have a trifecta right now in Iowa, so it's a lot easier to pass more party line issues. But at the same time, I still, do my due diligence to reach out to my Democrat counterparts to also try to get them on board with things, because I think it is, better when you have all sides of the aisle that come around on an issue like workforce or education or healthcare, whatever it may be. But everything revolves around that common thing of treat others the way you want to be treated. And normally you're going to be able to, gain respect that way and be able to work with folks to hopefully push, your agenda items. But, passing legislation isn't easy. If you're the, owner of a company, right, it's a lot easier to pass, policies through your board, of 8 people or even yourself as a sole proprietorship than it is to go in the legislature where you have 150 people you got to talk to, that are in the state legislatures. Go to Congress, right? That's 535, but in the state legislature, that's 150 people you got to deal with. And then you got, the governor's office and all their staff you got to deal with as well, and these department heads. So, it's a big bureaucracy, and the founders, both of the state of Iowa, but also of the United States, when they came up with the legislative system, they did it for a reason, because they don't want stuff to be able to be passed willy-nilly. And so, it's frustrating sometimes. It's frustrating for the Democrats right now that they can't pass everything they can in Congress. It was frustrating for us back in 2017 when we couldn't pass everything we wanted in Congress. But there's a reason for that, and the reason to make sure that if things are passed, that they have to be extremely well vetted, and not be extremely extremist if they're going to be getting passed on a large scale, either on the state or the federal level.
Yeah, that's always good, but it's always great when you see, a decent bill that comes out that just benefits all Americans, in this case, in your situation, Iowans, or in my case, Ohioans, or, anything like that here. Let me, my questions just disappeared here. Hang on. Let me ask you just two questions as a kind of a side note while I get my notes back here. So did you work in Governor Branstad's office?
So I actually worked, I actually worked for Governor Branstad for a day. So I worked the day before he transitioned over to Governor Reynolds being acting governor before he went to China. So I literally worked in his office for a day, and the next day they had the ceremony where they did the transition. But
Wow.
Governor Branstad's the chairman of our advisory board for RunGenZ, and he's done a phenomenal job. And I have nothing but great things to say about Governor Branstad, and he's been he's been a mentor to me for sure. And so he's helped me greatly with growing this organization and making it to what it is today. So I owe him a lot of things.
Oh, that's cool. And then let me just ask you one question. You said that when you ran the first time, you had the speaker against, supporting one of your opponents.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, was that Laura Upmeyer?
Linda Upmeyer.
I just asked you that because she was at the conference in Des Moines, so I was just curious. But
yeah. So Linda's actually on my board of directors now. Funny enough, right?
Oh wow, that's pretty good.
But how this works, Craig, is that good leaders understand once you get past the primary, you support who your nominee is, right? So as soon as I was done winning the primary, and here's the thing, the gal they picked out to run against me, business owner in the community, middle-aged woman, respected gal in the community. I mean, it made sense, right, on paper, but she again just didn't go out and do the work, and so that's why she lost. But again, Linda, like any good leader, realized once I was the nominee, well, then obviously they're going to support the nominee, and so she's been very good to me, ever since I became the nominee. And it was nothing like it wasn't like the party was sending hit pieces about me or whatever else. They just that's who they went to and said, hey, we don't know if this young guy or these other couple people are going to be able to do this. So would you step in? And she did, and obviously she got beat. But Linda is now on the board. But that comes around to what I said earlier about treat others like the way you want to be treated, and that means being able to build those relationships up after you might even have a little fight. You know what I mean? And so that's the same way in the legislature. Is you're going to have plenty of times where there's contentious issues that come up where you're going to have to go back and forth with your colleagues. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to still come back and continue to build those relationships because you might need their help at some point. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing about politics is you're always going to need that person's help at some point. And so you don't want to burn bridges because if you burn bridges, you're going to run out of them pretty soon.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, that's great. I know our party sometimes the Republican Party has a hard time, supporting the nominee after the primary. But I think your case with Speaker Upmeyer and you and Linda Upmeyer, and I think it really just goes to show you that how people whether it's state representative or the governor race, whoever wins the nomination needs the support because if the nominee doesn't win, the alternative is probably 10 times worse in most situations.
100%.
So I think it's a good point that I think we all forget about. Never Trumpers. Hint, hint. No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is my last question before we can do the close. You have a closing or do anything you like. So I talk to a lot of people I know, whether political activists or not, and maybe they don't do activism. I say I want to run at some point myself, and they say that sounds crazy. That I met a son of Josh Holstein, who was exactly 8 months older than I am.
Sure.
And I was just amazed by the fact. So now I go around saying, this is not something that this is something that you can do. It's just don't think you can't do it because there's literally an IC legislature in West Virginia, and there's you and yourself who ran, announced while you were in college. I think that's got that right. And all that. So, what would you say to people in order to kind of convince them to start thinking about running or being involved in the movement? What are your words of encouragement to them, to people who They think it's too much of a struggle or just don't know what to do regarding that.
Yeah, and Greg, that's a great question. What I tell folks is I remember in 2016, I had some buddies in college who they didn't necessarily care for President Trump. And, I asked them why. I said, well, did you vote? And they said, well, no, we didn't vote. And I said, well, you don't have any room to complain if you didn't go out and vote. I said, voting is extremely easy, okay? And I've traveled across the world and been in other countries like Haiti and Guatemala and some of these, or developing countries. And we are blessed here with our voting system and how easy it is to be able to vote for, the leader of our country. So I said, if you don't vote, then you don't get to complain. Well, and then when I ran in 2018, I said, if you don't either knock doors or give money, then you don't get to complain. And now I'm to the point where if you don't run for office and actually go and do something in your local community or in your state, then you don't get to complain. Because I'm tired of people complaining about where the direction this country is going. And then when I ask them to run and step out of their comfort zone, even for a local school board election or a library trustee position, they don't want to do it because they don't really care enough. You know what I mean? And so that's why young people like us have to step out and step up and be willing to say that, we're going to take that initial step because we have the time and energy to do it right now. And we're willing to go around knocking every single person's door and listen to them and tell them that we're going to fight for them in our community. And so you just have to go do it. You know what I mean? And that's why the, unofficial motto of RunGenZ is, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's why I put this coalition of leaders together to go tell young people like yourself, and the people listening, that we already have every example in the book of every, woman, person of color, gay person that's a conservative that's went out there and ran and done it. So you don't have an excuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're building here is this coalition of diverse individuals where no one has an excuse why they can't run wherever they're at.
Yeah. It may seem intimidating, but, with a great support group, maybe you could expand a little bit on how the mentorship program works. I think that might ease some people's concerns to the point here. Maybe talk about the mentorship program a little bit and how that works.
Yeah. So, essentially what happens is we're here to make it easier than ever to go run for office as a young person. When you apply on our website, Become a Leader, or on RunGenZ.com under the Become a Leader tab, we have an application process, a job interview process we go through. It's not really like an interview process. We're just getting to know you. And then we recommend an office that you should run for. We do district research. We figure out what is the easiest office for you to run for, or you can be the most viable at, make the most impact at in your community. And then at that point, we'll pair you up with somebody, that's a city council member or a state legislator that can help you through your race to figure out, how do I file out papers? How do I form a kitchen cabinet? How do I raise my first $1,000? How do I knock on doors? How do I form a grassroots coalition of volunteers? And we're here to answer all those questions that no one was there for me or Caleb or Amber when we were first running, but we're here for you guys. And so, again, we've made it easier than ever for young people to be able to run for office.
Yeah, that's great. I think that really, I think half of the time is people don't know what to do and they don't know who to ask, and they just give up because of they're just dumbfounded by the awe, by the, this isn't easy. This is hard, but it's got to be done. So, that's all the questions I have. So if you'd like to say anything else, by all means, we can put the info for the website up on the screen here too. Anything else? But
no, all I got to say is, Greg, thanks for having me on today. If you guys want to learn more about RunGenZ, go to RunGenZ.com. Our Twitter handle is @RunGenZ, Instagram's @run.genz, and Facebook's @RunGenZ. Thanks, Greg, for having me on.
All right. Thanks, Joe. It's good talking to you. Hope to see you soon.
Okay. Take care. See you, buddy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, we can sit here and complain about this. Nothing will change unless we all step up and decide to get active. Whether that be running for office with RunGenZ, and I'll give you how you can support them and their contact info. Their email is info@rungenz.com. That's info@rungenz.com. If you want to run, fill out their Become a Leader tab on their website at rungenz.com. You can check out their social medias. I'll put that in the description below. And their website, which I said above, I'll also put that in the description below. You can also make an alternative company if you don't have to, if that running for office is not for you, and that's perfectly fine. To companies you don't like, you fighting for free and fair press or exposing the hypocrisy of Democratic socialists. Everyone has a role to fight this, and if you don't, who will? As I say every episode, Edmund Burke once said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So get active, and we will take back our country together. Subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram so you don't miss an episode of our show that fights to expose Marxism and defend the Constitution. Turn to the Constitution. Thanks, and we'll be back here next week for freedom. Have an awesome day.